here today from California to the New York Island.
In March of 1972, 2,500 neighborhood leaders from over 30 cities came together in a Catholic church on Chicago's West Side for the first nationwide conference to fight redlining and FHA abuses.
We had people from every kind of walk of life, from middle class to people on welfare.
It was an unusual gathering, one reporter wrote, in that it brought together in a display of harmony racial groups that had been traditionally antagonistic to each other in changing central neighborhoods.
Gail would talk about the people in the back of the room, the academics, who were taking bets on how long we'd last, because they all had learned you can't organize in a racially changing neighborhood. You can organize a black neighborhood, a white neighborhood. Racial change is a nightmare. We just had riots in our cities. And here was an organization that all across the United States was organizing in racially changing neighborhoods. Thing that I knew as a sociologist couldn't be done, they were doing.
People in the back of the hall were taking bets on how long would we hold together. And the people in the back of the room are saying, it'll never hold together. I think they suffered from too much education.
Their plan? Target elected officials, educate them, demand their political support, and leverage their support to make redlining a national issue.
We didn't maybe know all the right words, and we didn't know all the right letters, all these bureaucratic offices, and we didn't know a lot of those things. But the one thing that we did know that the people in that conference said, and we have found the enemy, and it's not us.
We have a new enemy now, said Bernice Davis, a black leader from Chicago's West Side, as Edward Stefaniak, a leader in the city's Polish community, nodded in agreement.
We were not here to talk about what white people did or what black people did. We're talking about how these institutional decisions and practices affected all of us.
National People's Action was born.
When people said the neighborhood groups could not be organized from across this country, we went everywhere we needed to go to bring justice.
The goal? Disclosure. Force banks to disclose where they offer conventional home loans and where they don't. Prove that banks credit-starved black and racially changing neighborhoods, and then hold them to account to undermine their denials that they redline.
Robert Bartell, head of the Federal Home Loan Bank, says redlining allegations have been investigated, but that no clear-cut cases were found to take action against.
We have not been able to find a case where we could clearly establish that an association has denied a person a loan strictly on the basis of the location of the property, which is the usual definition of redlining.
We had a lot of meetings with Bartell. Gail was there, and we were around this table with the leadership. I remember him saying, you people wouldn't know what to do with the data if we gave it to you. You're not smart enough to figure this out. We're smart. We're bankers.
Don't we have a right to know? The bank's deposits are being insured by the federal government. Don't we have a right to know, as U.S. taxpayers, where are they lending? And why aren't we getting a loan if it's our deposits? And so, not to go back to Jimmy Stewart days.
You're thinking of this place all wrong, as if I had the money back in a safe. The money's not here. Well, your money's in Joe's house. That's right next to yours. And in the Kennedy house, and Mrs. Maitland's house, and 100 others.
That's not how things worked on Chicago's West Side. Local banks invested the deposits of Venkata and her neighbors, not in their community, but off in the suburbs.
Just tell them to bring their shares over here, and I will pay 50 cents on the dollar.
Oh, you never miss a trick, do you, Potter?
Financial institutions make decisions of where they can make more money, take deposits of people living in these communities and invest them in high-rises on the lake or new subdivisions in the outer ring suburbs. They think it's more profitable for the institution, but what they're in essence is doing is becoming self-fulfilling prophets, taking money out of the communities, predicting that the communities are going to eventually die, and then, a couple years later saying, see, we were right, but in effect, they caused it by disinvesting out of our communities.
The real first strategy Gail developed is that we really need a federal law that has banks disclose where they lend.
We need to know who's making loans where, and then we'll organize around it.
Once you had that data, it proved that people were right. They weren't getting conventional mortgages, and consequently, that raises the question, well, why shouldn't we?
NPA affiliates across the country carried out what they called hits. Confront their local officials and congressional representatives, get their support, and go to Congress to secure legislation to stop redlining.
Discuss and tell us who you are and what it is you want to discuss.
I am Gail Sancada, chairperson of NPA. These are leadership from all of the country.
She didn't play by the rules. She didn't play by the rules of being a polite middle-class lady.
People yelling is no way to discuss rationally.
Well, when you understand, when you don't have money in Learjet, you yell and you chant and you organize.
She would cut through that barrier, that artificial screen that we put up to protect ourselves, or that the banker would put up to protect himself. It didn't bother her. If somebody was trying to close the door, she'd put a foot in the door.
We will do whatever needed from today on.
Gail wanted to go after the guy and grab him by the neck. She wanted them to feel some anger.
They did not believe we would follow them everywhere across the country. So we came up here to New York and found them in their ivory towers, thumbing their noses out the window at us as we marched down the street.
She articulated the anger, and she often did it in ways that I don't think a man could have done what she did, because there would have been fistfights.
We want to talk to you here. We need to set it down at a meeting with leadership. If we can set it today for a future date within the next couple of weeks. Don't look for the cops. We're not going to hurt you. We want you to don't look at me when you're listening. No. Hey, turn around.
A lot of people get intimidated when they want to confront somebody who is doing them wrong because that barrier gets put up. She didn't see that barrier. If she did see it, she didn't let it intimidate her. And a lot of people do.
It's one of the most interesting things I think I've ever been part of. So you have on-the-ground anti-redlining activists in 30 or 40 cities. I was blown away. I was a student of political activism and community organizing, but I had never seen this kind of sophistication, both analytically and tactically. So my first reaction was, boy, do I want to help these people.
Kuttner told them his boss, Senator William Proxmire, who chaired the Senate Banking Committee, would, quote, be prone to energize progressive reform because bankers won't budge without pressure.
Barstow admits his bank redlines in certain areas.
Do we make loans in slums? No. So apparently we are redlining in that particular slum area.
But you're discriminating against certain areas.
Yes. And I think any lender in Chicago will tell you the same thing if they're honest with themselves.
Kuttner recalled that on holidays, the bank lobbyists would push a cart down the halls of the Senate, handing out scotch, champagne, and other gifts. They always passed up Proxmire's office, he said. They knew you can't buy him.
We said, okay, let's invent some legislation. I wish I could take credit for doing this, but 95% of this had already been thunk up by the community groups.
They called it the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act.
What we want is a federal law that requires disclosure of lending by volume, by number of mortgages, and by census tract. Everybody understood if you could normalize credit flows into these so-called changing neighborhoods, you had a chance of keeping them integrated. And if you could slow down the blockbusting, then black people could become homeowners without being taken advantage of by blockbusters and real estate speculators. And so NAACP, Urban League, all the major black groups came on board. And so we had this very unusual coalition of black leaders and white ethnics. And Proxmire loved it. He was anti-redlining. This is exactly trademark Proxmire. So it was one of the most marvelous interracial coalitions with a very subtle analysis of how real estate markets work that I've ever seen.
The Senate Banking Committee is holding hearings on a bill to require banks and savings and loan institutions to disclose how and where they lend their money. One focus of the hearings is the practice of redlining, also known as urban disinvestment.
The national housing crisis has become a plague on all our houses, all our neighborhoods, and all our cities. Congress needs national full disclosure to analyze our national housing crisis and develop private reinvestment programs to encourage private markets to preserve our neighborhoods.
We want disclosure. Disclosure became a theme song. Sincata was saying, you give us that information, where those loans are, and we'll take care of the problem. We'll go after the banks.
If community members are depositing into these banks, where are these banks lending their customer money? We want to know.
National Security Bank, located in zip code 60622 with $75 million in assets, has $33 million in savings from their home community, but only gave back $172,000 worth of loans to that same local neighborhood, a rate of return less than 1 cent on the dollar.
For their part, the bankers testified that we followed consumer demand, we did not create it. They said, this is no basis for suggesting that home financing determines the stability or character of a neighborhood or community. NPA and Sincata had already laid a foundation of political support, as did organizers in other cities. Still, the Senate vote looked to be close. So NPA groups returned home to lock in political support across the country.
Those congressmen and representatives knew that when they went back home, that local group was still going to be outside their office, demonstrating, pressuring. They couldn't hide. As Gail would always say, there's no place to hide. And so it was, as Gail would say, and Trapp say, people power, pure people power.
One vote. A single vote. The Senate passed the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act by one vote. The House vote followed. President Ford signed the new law in late 1975, just days before he left office.
It confirms for the first time recognition by Congress that redlining exists, and it arms local residents with information to point the finger and put pressure on specific banks and savings and loans in their own neighborhood.
Redlining was no longer a secret. Banks could no longer deny it. Now, NPA could acquire a bank's own data to hold them to account if they redlined.
We caught the bankers off guard. They didn't think we could pull this off. That was part of the fun, was outwitting the bankers' lobbies.
The community group in Massachusetts was so powerful that it became the depository for the mortgage data. It was in their office. And they were the most active group making agreements with banks, taking this data and going to the banks, saying, this is what you're doing. We're going to come after you if you don't change what you're doing.
And we said, hey, we got a cool coalition here. We got a working majority in Congress. We got people on the ground who are even more influential than ever, who just want a big success. What else can we do?
There really was an opportunity to develop a national movement, not just against redlining, but for community reinvestment.
Why not create an affirmative obligation on them to proactively seek out lending opportunities in these formerly underserved neighborhoods? And let's call it the Community Reinvestment Act.
The bank lobby response? The government can't tell us where to lend.
The bankers really went nuts. We don't want the government to allocate credit. Markets are supposed to allocate credit. And we said, yeah, but markets, as played by bankers, have been allocating credit away from these neighborhoods. And we need a counterweight to that.
Once again, community organizations hammered their local senators and congressmen. In October of 1977, the Community Reinvestment Act became law. Called the CRA, it gave leverage to use data revealed from the Disclosure Act to compel banks to invest in the communities that invested in them.
Now the banks having an affirmative obligation to meet the community credit needs. The community is sitting there at the table, telling the bank what their credit needs are, working with the bank to develop a new lending program that meets that need.
And right away, they started having agreements with banks all around the country, major ones in Chicago, all across the country, and it did make a difference. And money began to pour back into these neighborhoods.
Millions of dollars were won, millions and millions of investment dollars.